Redditors who rage quit a job without thinking. What was the last straw? Story 1 call center, inbound sales. They told me I needed to have higher sales numbers and gave me training materials tools to help. It suggested that if the customer wanted only one service we offered, that I add on other services after the call had ended and hope the customer didn't notice. I questioned this, and they said that is how Dave has the highest sales for the past 6 months, and I should follow his example. Yeah, I know. Story 2, it was a Wednesday. I got a call from my mom when I was at work to tell me that my dad took a turn for the worse and maybe had a day or two left to live. I immediately went to the company owner's small business and told her the situation, and I really needed to leave right away since he lived a few hundred miles away. She told me she understood, but since I was working on some important projects, I should just come in on Saturday since he should be dead by then. I said okay. Turned around, walked to my desk, deleted all my personal files from the computer, left my badge and keys on my keyboard, and walked out. Dad passed on Friday, and I turned off my phone that night until the following Wednesday or Thursday while I spent time with my family. I already hated the job and the owner for other reasons and found a new job a few weeks later, so I can't say I regret anything. Edit, thank you everyone for your kind responses. This happened a few years ago. My father had dementia for a decade before this, so we were all prepared for it. Not that it made it easier, but the wounds have healed, and I find I'm able to remember the good times with him more now than I did when he was so sick. I'm doing excellent nowadays, but really appreciate how much concern some people have for a total stranger's well-being. Story 3, so the building my job was in closed down at 9 p.m. Everybody except security had to get out so they could shut everything down. One of my supervisors, I had 8 of them. Yes, it was like Office Space kept scheduling me until 9:30 p.m. I repeatedly brought this up at the end of the night and was always told no, that's just a mistake. You need to leave. Fast forward 3 months, I get called into a disciplinary meeting. The reason I kept leaving early, I had like 8 attendance points from leaving early because one of my idiot bosses who worked in the same building and definitely should have known when it closes couldn't figure out how to schedule. I explained my side, which is pretty obvious, and they say they'll hold off on any disciplinary action while they look into it. A couple days later, they told me they weren't going to remove those attendance points. I told them to shove it up there, walked out, and went to a concert with some of my now former coworkers. Story 4, director of a preschool. I worked at pulled me in her office and literally foaming at the mouth told me I had no business going to my higher up to report suspected child abuse. Walked out. Never looked back. If I'm not mistaken, the preschool is now shut down. Story 5, my boss came back from his 30th smoke break that shift. Saw me taking a breather after I cleaned the entire kitchen on my own and told me to stop being so unproductive. You, Matt, edit, I worked in the Pizza Hut inside a branch of the big red grocery store. I was working a local bike shop at the time and had a minor surgery. The shop called me and told me I needed to come in because another mechanic called in sick. They were aware of my surgery and just didn't care. I quit during that phone conversation. Story 6, boss, not doing payroll before leaving on a business trip and leaving it to the poor office manager to tell people they weren't going to get paid on time. I walked out of the staff meeting saying I'd be back when paychecks arrived. By the time I got home, I was mad enough to call my ops manager back and quit. Why didn't the boss do payroll? Stated answer was printer toner cartridge at home was empty. Guess had never heard of writing checks with a pen. Story 7, I started working a bar in town and was told to be at work at 7 p.m. for my first shift with a manager providing me with a typed timesheet showing my new working hours. Went home and had a cat nap. At 5 p.m. my new manager calls me asking where the I am and telling me I need to come in now. I referred him to my timesheet, which stated I was to be in at 7 p.m., to which he told me the timesheet doesn't matter. You do what I tell you. Hearing this, I politely told him that I would not be in tonight or ever good night and went back to my cat nap. Story 8, I worked for a restaurant for 2 weeks that refused to teach me anything but berated me regularly for not knowing how to do anything. One day at the daily pre-meal meeting, my boss told me that you are complete and total and you'll always be. I waited until they got busy that night, then went to home and never came back. Story 9, I sold cars from 2011 to 2013. I was pretty good at my job, had 6 different 20-car months, and averaged 17 cars a month. I attributed to the fact that I truly took care of the customer and knew I never pitched a vehicle that wouldn't suit their wants and needs, always fought for a deal that was fair to them and the dealership, was courteous of their time, etc. The thing that really made me stand out was that devoted a lot of time into product knowledge. No one in my dealership knew the cars like me specifically. No one knew the features and how to operate it. My customer surveys were almost always perfect. A big factor in that is that I spent as long as it took after they picked up the car to show them how all the tech features in the car worked. I got their phone paired, set up their navigation, door and seat settings, everything. My dealership took notice of this around the same time as the industry did at the time. Not many salespeople really cared about post-delivery customer service. I always knew that's what would bring a customer back to buy another car, or at least give me a referral. My dealership figured that out too. So they started something called a technology clinic that would be held every other Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. I was volunteered by my sales manager. I would not be paid for it, even though my job was to sell cars. That's how I made money, being the young company guy that I was, and being someone who truly believes in giving the highest quality customer service possible. I begrudgingly agreed, not that my agreement mattered. Here's the thing about the car business. Saturday is the busiest day of the week. I always sold at least one car on Saturdays, and would often sell as many as 3, just off of fresh customers. Granted, I worked at a huge dealership. This clinic would often take up my entire morning, so I was missing out on a shitload of customers. Over time, I came to realize that the other salespeople were turning and burning their customers as soon as the deal was done. They wouldn't go over the car's features per the customer's request. Instead, they would tell them about this nice little technology clinic we had. So basically, I would spend my entire Saturday doing other people's jobs for customers that were not mine, on deals I didn't get paid on, during a clinic that I wasn't being compensated for. On top of that, this clinic was supposed to be more in-depth knowledge on the features, not basic that should have been done at the time the car was sold. So after 2 months of doing this clinic, having no support from managers to get people to do their jobs instead of pawning it off on me, I walked into the clinic and hit my breaking point. 35 customers were there that day, when the clinic was supposed to only have 7 to 8 max. I spent my entire day doing other people's jobs and giving these customers the basic service they were entitled to. That day, the dealership sold 45 cars. 45 customers I missed out on. Everyone but the one new guy got a sale, and I heard multiple salespeople telling customers about the technology clinic. Meaning 2 weeks from then, I'd likely have another 35 or more people in my clinic. I waited until I had helped every single customer. They showed up to the clinic. It wasn't their fault, so I didn't take it out on them. When they left, I went to my desk, typed up a letter of resignation, and went to the GM's office. I went to the GM and told him everything I told you. I was going to give him a chance to make it right, because frankly, I made a load of money there until the clinic. He responded with, well, talk to the staff and see what we can do, to which I responded, no, you won't. So, hey, Ray's what I can do. I put the resignation letter on his desk, shook his hand, and walked out. The following Tuesday, while leaving a meeting with their biggest competitor, I got a call from the owner of the dealership. I just left. He offered me $200 per clinic I had already done, and for every clinic in the future, as well as giving me a written promise to make me a finance manager within 6 months. So I went back. I stayed there for another 1.5 years, until being a FI manager had left me completely disillusioned with the car business. A lot of you seem interested in why I left finance. A couple of reasons. The big one is sometimes you get trapped by your own talent. You're good at something you don't like, and despite being good at a job, you could also just not be cut out for it. That was me. So hey, Race, another long post for you. One story comes to mind. This is what really broke me. Single mother, just getting back on her feet, had spent the last 2 years fixing her credit to get a reliable car for her and her son. She comes in for an advertised lease deal, new 2014 Honda CR-V, for $239 a month plus tax. Only about $500 due at signing. The thing is that about those advertised lease deals is you need to have the credit to get approved for that payment. Lease approvals are different than regular finance deals. Approvals come in tiers. So if you didn't get the approved tier for the $239 deal, the next tier would make the payment $306 or something like that. This single mother agreed to the $239 payment, but got approved for the $306 tier. That sucked for her, but that's the nature of the beast, her credit, her problem, and there's nothing I can do. So I got break the news to her. She's understandably upset, but I go through her credit report and explain why that may be the case, and assure her that at the end of this lease, she will definitely be on the top tier, so long as she pays her bills on time. I close her, she's still happy, and it's all good. I go back to my office to get the paperwork ready and let the finance director know I'm rolling the car. A few minutes later, the finance director calls me over. I see that he has an eating grin on his face. He informs me that he made a couple of calls and actually got her bumped to the $239 rate. I'm happy because we got this lady a way better deal until reality sets in. I know what he's about to tell me to do. Something I hate, but I won't have a choice, the lease bump. Basically, since this lady already agreed to a $306 payment, but after the agreement, we got her approved for $239 to a piece of finance director. That means that's $77 a month to play with to pack and product. $77 over 36 months is over $2,500 worth of product. I was expected to then give her a menu presentation sheet with all the products and sell her on products first, and tell her that all of it would only cost her $9 a month, and her total payment would be $315. I gave her the worst menu presentation in my entire career. hoping that she would just push the menu back to me like every other lease customer. She didn't. In fact, she basically bought it all. Why? Because she liked me, she trusted me, she believed I had her best interests at heart, and she was wrong. She took the car home and likely never used any of the she got outside of the maintenance package. There's a lot of mental gymnastics guys in the car business tell themselves to be able to justify the things some of them do. Yeah, that was still a decent lease payment for a great car. Yeah, based on her debt-to-income ratio, she could afford it. Yeah, a lot of those products will eventually come in handy. But let's cut I misled that person, I lied to that person, I stole money from that person, I didn't sleep that night, I did what most car guys do on a Saturday night. I went out and got hammered to dull the shame I had. That hangover the next morning was one of the most illuminating moments in my life. That's when I knew I had to get out and never look back. Story 10 worked at Best Buy in high school. Some people from a different store transferred over, and one of them took over scheduling for my supervisor. She gave me a total of 10 hours a week down from my usual 30 to 40. I had to save 2 checks just to pay my shitty cheap cricket phone bill with those hours. I complained to myself about her scheduling, and they raised me to about 15 hours. I couldn't understand why or what I had done to get cut so much. When my birthday came close, I reminded her constantly to not schedule me that day, which shouldn't have been a problem considering my hours. She told me constantly not to worry. Schedule comes out, and that's the one day I'm scheduled a full 8 hours. I try to contact her, and they tell me she's on vacation, and I can't change my schedule. I called to quit that same day. Then later I find out that the manager who I called when I quit had been snuggling money from the store the moment I called her and was leaving the city. She never told anyone I called to quit. Story 11 IT manager here. Was working for a company that didn't consider us a real department. Lots of things leading up to this, but the last straw was an announcement that a satellite office was being shut down and any employees that would relocate to our office. We, the IT department, found out about this at the same time as the rest of the company, months after the decision had been made. Nobody told us anything, and this would involve obscene amounts of extra travel, hours, and stress as we accommodate the moves, the infrastructure, and everything else involved with such a move. I left in the middle of the announcement. Follow up, my boss, CFO, threatens me to fire me if I don't do the work. LOL, can't fire someone who's already quit Tap's Temple. Then the CEO calls me and asks me back to negotiate. I agree to come back for 6 months if I get a 25 raise for myself and my entire team. After 6 months, I left and they laid off everyone else. Story 12, I worked on a farm throughout high school for a very wealthy couple. The husband was a successful commercial real estate agent, and the wife trained dogs to do hunt field tests. I primarily worked for the wife assisting and training the dogs, but as it was a farm, I did various things for the husband, as well the husband was a raging alcoholic who would get pissed if you wouldn't share a drink with him when offered. When his wife was out of town participating in competitions with the dogs, I would have to drive over to the farm multiple times a day to feed the horses, clean out their stalls, etc., and I would often run into him. But I tried to avoid it when possible because he made me uncomfortable anyway. I was like 17, and it was summer. So I accidentally slept through my 6 a.m. alarms one morning and didn't get to the farm until around 8 to feed the horses and clean out their stalls, not like it mattered. Horses can't tell time. The husband was there and had already been drinking as I could smell it on him, and he started laying into me about being so late. He told me I was a poor white trash piece of, and if my parents let me oversleep for my job, then they're even worse white trash pieces of, and I won't ever amount to anything just like them. Yada yada. I told him he could take care of the horse himself, and that I quit, and as I was leaving, he was yelling at the top of his lungs that he would find me and kill me. I never went back. Story 13, back in college, I delivered food. I worked all the time, picked up shifts, and was highly valued. Corporate wanted to have a front staff meeting, and the managers didn't communicate it to the employees, so literally no one showed I was working at the time of the meeting, so I saw the managers get reamed by Corp. They rescheduled the meeting for the following Saturday morning, which happened to be the day after my birthday, and one of the few days I requested off. I told them I wasn't going to make the meeting, and they got all huffy-puffy about how they would have to do something if I didn't come. This happened at the end of my lunch shift, and I just said I'd call a local pizza shop, set up an interview, and didn't show up for my evening shift. They called, and we're all we could figure something out, and I said, nah, I'm good. I probably could have just toughed it out because the managers typically only lasted 4 months or so, but I had enough of this dude by then. Story 14, my aunt got me a job as a tech in a chemical plant. As I was young and stupid, I told the guy who was supposed to train me that I got the job through my aunt. He decided to haze me. After the first shift, I already almost decked him as he would handily forget to tell me things and would berate and belittle me all the time. The second shift, it continued, and while I was working on a pipe, he didn't close it as he was supposed to do, If I hadn't been aware of the rumbling and rolled away, I would have been blasted by a jet of boiling steam. Went to the team leader. He said I was overreacting, but he proposed to move me to another shift. I quit. My aunt was pretty upset with me until she heard, through the rumor mill, that the guy indeed had done what I said he did. Story 15, I was interning at a human rights nonprofit. I was so happy to be there. However, the people in my specific office were awful. We didn't start until 10, and they would always manage to be late, and I didn't have a key to the office. I got there an hour early because that's how the train time lined up, and I was fine waiting the hour until 10, but they wouldn't get in until 11 some days, or even 12. Did they ever notify me when they were going to be late? No. Did I ask them to? Yes, on my last day, it hit 11, and I asked when someone would be there. They said 11:30. It hit 1200, and I just left the items I had with me if there's outside the door and walked away. I sent an email to them saying I can't deal with this anymore, and they never responded back. Edit at. Story 16, I worked for a pharmacy for almost 2 years, and we had hired a second replacement pharmacist who requested a weekend off each month. Well, when the pharmacist took his weekend, they filled his shift with a floating relief pharmacist. Well, there was a particular one. We'll call him Jim. Jim had been a pharmacist for 40 years and had his own way of doing everything. Long story short, this guy didn't keep up on workplace training, new systems, anything. Instead, he would sit around and work as slowly as possible, and when you asked him for anything, he would pretend he didn't hear you. When the customer would come to pick up their script and it wasn't filled, he would legitimately blame the person he was working with in front of the customer, saying, X didn't tell me. I told the main pharmacist, if they schedule me with him again, I'm done. They did. I ghosted that company. Edit lots of trigger people, because I called it a pharmaceutical company. When I typed pharma into my phone, pharmaceutical was the first thing that popped up, so I clicked it. I was in a store that distributed drugs, aka pharmacy, not a company that produced the drug, pharmaceutical company. I learned a valuable lesson today. Story 17, I was a truck unloader at Walmart. We unloaded freight into skids sorted by department. There were 3 of us who were new, doing the best we could, trying to memorize where the department skids are and hauling as fast as we could. The store manager came to check in on us and said we weren't going fast enough. To speed us up, he pushed everything that was on rollers onto the floor. I walked over and gave him my badge and knife and left. Story 18, I worked for a landscaping company that operated more like an MLM scheme. I only worked for them for like a week. They mostly targeted students and immigrants who needed work in the summertime and would take anything with promises like make your own schedule, make X, Y an hour, and work outside. They target desperate people, those without proper documentation even, and they paid cash. So everything was under the table, and I'm 100% certain they were not paying taxes. I was stupid enough to go for it when I was 18, went to the info seminar and instantly got terrible vibes, but I figured I don't have anything else going on, so why not the day they pick us up in a cube van, like 15 people crammed in without seatbelts, and drive us to a location. Then they give us aeration machines, and we go around trying to sell plans and aerating lawns. Basically, whatever you sold, you would get to keep 10 of the money, and the company kept the other 90. You also had to work like a 15-hour day in the hot summer sun. No supervision all day, no bathroom breaks, or anything unless you chose to took them yourself, and you'd have to find a bathroom to use too. Anyway, I did this for a few days, and the pay was miserable. Let's say you collect $1,200, well, you get to keep 120. 120 15 hours is 8 hours, and at the time, minimum wage was higher than that. Well, sometimes I got a little higher than that, but much of the time it was around minimum wage or lower. The second day we went and showed up, and they drove us to another city an hour away. It was pouring rain all day. Nobody wanted to buy. I don't blame them, and nobody wanted their lawn aerated in the pouring rain. So I ended up with like nothing at the end of the day, and it was miserable. The next time I came back in the morning, we drove out to some suburb, and the guy gives me this talk about how last time I didn't make enough money, and I needed to pick up the slack this time because these machines are expensive, I'm clearly not trying hard enough, etc. Well, that pissed me right off. So that day, I took the aeration machine out and did my best to sell, did the aerations where I could. Worked up a sweat. ID collected $1,800 by the end of the day. At the end of the day, you would wait at a certain spot, and they'd pick you up with the machine and bring you back to the station so you could deliver the money and get your cut. So instead of going to the pickup spot, I went to the grocery store and bought a bag of sugar and poured it in the gas tank of the aeration machine and left it by the side of the road. Then I took the bus home and pocketed all the money. I ignored all their phone calls, and eventually they stopped calling. They never took identification or social insurance numbers or anything, so they had no real proof I even worked for them in the first place. This was about 10 years ago now, and my only regret is that I didn't do that the first day. Edit, yes, I was talking about Canadian property stars, not afraid to name and shame them, because they're scumbags. Story 19, I got in trouble for going to the bathroom. I worked at a call center. It was an emergency, and I followed protocol, finished my call as best as I could, wrote in the team chat that I would be switching to busy, put my phone on busy, and ran to the washroom, which was on the other side of the building. Seriously, one washroom for a building of like 1,500 employees, and you literally have to walk like 1 kilometer to get to it. I took like 5 to 10 minute tops. I can't emphasize enough what an emergency code brown situation this was. And when I got back, put my phone back on and got back in, I was reamed out in front of the entire calling floor, easily 300 people on my contract, because I couldn't wait the extra 2H for my assigned 15-minute break. Next day, I was resolved to quit without any notice, talked to HR, my supervisor, and told them that today would be my last day, and am out. Edit, I should note that morale company-wide was horrible to begin with. People were just depressing, and we as employees were never supported and always just given and told that we weren't doing well enough. The thing was the straw that broke the camel's back, but I was on the fence for a while about quitting. Story 20, I was 18 years old. I took a year off between high school and university to work and save money. Had a part-time job at a self-serve gas station to earn a little spending cash, as almost all of my full-time job money was going to university savings. New assistant manager started, instantly had a hate-on for me, and treated me like a lazy SOB, because I had arranged with the past assistant manager, the mom of one of my school friends, to work 2 slower weeknights, 10 hours per week. Every time I talked to the new assistant manager, she tried to pressure me into taking shifts that interfered with my full-time job. And she started saying that I wasn't a team player. It wasn't fair that the manager wouldn't change the shifts I'd agreed to. I needed to take more hours, etc. 2 months after new assistant manager started, I got in a car crash. It wasn't my fault. I T-boned a lady who ran a red light, and the lady barely managed to get her car to the local police station, where she filed a false police report stating that I ran that red light. While I'm at the police station, new assistant manager calls to ask me if I can come in 2 hours early, aka 45 minutes from the time she called. I apologized, said no, sorry, I can only come in for my regular start time. Assistant manager freaks out. Apparently everyone I work with says I'm lazy. I don't care about my job. I never do anything to help anyone out. I'm self-centered. She works hard, but I don't appreciate her. On and on like that until I hang up on her. I show up at work 5 minutes before my regular time, storming the customer entrance rather than the employee entrance. Slam my key on the counter in front of a couple customers. Tell her I was in a bad, not at fault accident, and when she called, I was trying to resolve the false police report that was filed about me, and that I refused to work another minute for that company as long as she was an assistant manager there. Assistant manager has a wide-eyed look and attempts to say something as I walk out the door and never return. Story 21, worked at a rental car agency for about 9 months, dealt with nasty customers, 247 who would demean me, cuss me out, or sob. It was exhausting. One day, a customer gets upset. We don't have a specific make model of SUV for him, even though size is the only promised vehicle spec for a reservation, and he spits on me, right in my face. My manager escorted him out of the building, but didn't say a word to me, clocked out, and never looked back. Edit, I understand it was illegal, but I left and never came back. My manager would have probably buried it under the rug anyway, due to protecting the brand at all costs, no security cameras. I'm also a nice, timid lady, so for me to fight back would have been way out of my character. Thanks for looking out for me, Reddit friends. Story 22, when I was in between jobs, I applied to work a construction job that needed harness-trained people. I was just coming off working as a solar installer, so I figured I'd give a shot. First day on the job, they take me up to the top of their scaffolding section to clamp down beams. No biggie. I ask where their walkboards or scaffolding walks are for this floor, because all the other floors have walkways, whereas this one is just 1-inch beam, 3-foot gap, 1-inch beam all the way across, 100 feet in the air. They tell me they don't have any. Okay, you'll deal. After a few hours of grueling work, I depleted my gallon jug of water and was getting dizzy. I called down to the elevator operator to bring me down. Without missing a beat, he shouts climb and walks off to smoke a cigarette. I climbed down all 14 or so stories on angled beams with no harness while bordering on heat exhaustion. Walked up to the foreman, told him he was going to kill someone, and it wasn't going to be me, and left. Edit, to all the commenters talking about reporting them to OSHA. I got the job by a friend, and I couldn't even tell you the name of the place now. This was about 6 years ago. At the time, I just wanted to be rid of them. But yes, I absolutely should have notified OSHA. Story 23, I worked at Best Buy in the mid-00s. I started as a cashier and eventually made my way to the customer service booth, which was something you had to earn. One day, it was a bit busier than usual, and I was in the booth with another girl who was a notorious lazy. The boss asked her to jump on a register to clear out a line, and she said no. So, the boss asked me, and I said no also because I was already given another task. The next day, they pulled me into the office and told me I was demoted because of it. I walked right to my locker, grabbed my stuff, and left. Turns out the girl was banging the boss, and that's why she was allowed to say no, but I couldn't. Story 24. I need a summer job while in high school. So I applied a local grocery store to Bagstocklian. My first day there was some sort of confusion as to what I was supposed to or to whom I was to report. I was sent to the front counter where the customer service manager gave me a till and told me to open a register. Mind you, ID had zero training on a register. I didn't even know how to put the till in it for sake. I told the lady this and was told to go do my job. Within about 2 minutes at the register, there was a line several deep, and I'm just standing there with the till in my hands. The customer service lady comes storming over asking why I had such a line, and I tried again to explain to her that I was supposed to be a stocker or whatever and that I knew nothing about operating a register. She called me stupid in front of the customers, so I handed her the till and told her to go herself. Walked down the street in my uniform and got a job at another grocery store. Story 25. I actually did this like 2 months ago for the first time. I'm a bartender and I was working in some shitty Mexican restaurant downtown. The tips were because the food was so we were barely ever busy. So already I'm living in NYC, making barely $400 a week when I'm used to making more than double. At this point, I've been there 2 months, and I hate it more and more every day. Around this time, my mother gets really bad pneumonia, and due to complications, it degraded her heart. So she has to have open heart surgery to repair a valve. It's a risky procedure, and my mother is touching 65. Now, let me state that staff turnover was incredibly high, because in addition to us making horrible money, the manager was a complete and utter moron. Most staff left after a month. So when my mom gives me a date for her surgery, I go to my manager and give her a basic breakdown of the situation and tell her I need 4 days off from X to Y so I can be with my family. She says no problem, but just to play it safe, I send emails and texts to her confirming that I indeed do have these days off. She agrees. I think cool, no problem. Well, I was dead wrong. 3 days before the surgery, the schedule for the week comes out, and am scheduled through the entire week. I immediately go to my manager and ask what he is up, because I'm not wasting away behind this moldy, rat-infested bar in the West Village while my mom has surgery. No bullshit, this woman has the nerve to say I didn't request off at all. When I show her my paper trail stating that yes, I did put in a request, she says what difference does it make if you were there? The surgery is going to have an outcome, whether you're there or not. And starts to rattle off how I need to be a team player and am up her by requesting off and yada yada. Her voice fades off and I literally see red. I say nothing and go back to work. This is at 5 p.m. Happy hour, and our rush starts at 8. I'm the only bartender on today. Fast forward to 8:30. My bar is slammed. I have a bunch of drink tickets from the servers, and it's a mess. Total shit show. My manager comes behind the bar, and instead of offering any assistance, she tells me to not bring home drama to work. I stare at her in disbelief for a moment, truly stunned that such a tone-deaf moron could possibly be in charge of anything. I laughed in her stupid face and walked right out the door and went to go see my mom. TLDR manager says making margaritas is more important than my dying mom. P.S. Mom made a full recovery. Story 26. When I was in high school, I worked as a flower shop clown, standing at the side of the road, holding a 15-pound sign, waving at traffic to entice them to buy flowers. My second weekend for bros in a red Chevette kept driving by every 10 minutes or so, honking and flipping me off. Fine, whatever. They disappeared for about 45 minutes. They came back and hucked a Wendy's Frosty at me. Thankfully, it missed. They went around the block and came at me again. I threw the sign Frisbee style at their car. It smashed the passenger door and broke the window. The driver dynamited the brakes and came to a screeching halt, and the 4 bro dogs got out. Obviously wanted to fight me. Keep in mind, I'm wearing a clown suit. They're chasing me across the parking lot of the mall, and I run past the 2 security idiots at the entrance. I run inside and into the flower shop and into the back. I get changed, take my wig off, tell the manager I quit, and I left. As I was walking out the door, they were still screaming at the security guards, and the cops had showed up. I got a call that afternoon saying that my paycheck was being held up because of the damage to the Chevette, and I was banned from the mall. No regrets.